a world where globalization is no longer an option, but an existential imperative. Any polarization.
In a move that's sending shockwaves through international politics, Kenyan President William Ruto's recent speech in China has sparked tension with the United States. As Ruto highlights Kenya's growing partnership with China and calls for a new era of cooperation and respect, Washington watches closely, and not everyone is pleased.
We export tea, coffee, flowers, and more. And I trust many of you may have enjoyed a cup of Kenyan tea or coffee.
But amid this diplomatic drama, a powerful lesson emerges from Captain Ibrahim Traore's bold leadership in 2025, one about standing firm, speaking truth to power, and reshaping global alliances. Today, we break down what Ruto said, why it's angering the US, and what Traore's example teaches us about leadership in a shifting world.
Our ties have only deepened since. Bold thinking and imagined global architecture.
The bold move, Ruto's speech that shook the world. President William Ruto's speech in China was far more than a routine diplomatic address. It was a bold declaration of Africa's renewed assertiveness on the global stage. From the very beginning, Ruto made it unmistakably clear that Africa will no longer be a passive recipient of foreign aid or influence. This message resonated powerfully with African leaders, citizens, and many across the continent who have long awaited such a strong and unapologetic voice. The United States, historically accustomed to its dominant role in African affairs, immediately felt the impact of Ruto's words. His speech served as a clarion call for African countries to diversify their partnerships beyond traditional Western alliances. By highlighting Kenya's deepening ties with China, Ruto challenged the old geopolitical order and signaled a significant shift in Africa's international relations landscape. Ruto's rhetoric embodied the spirit of African pride, sovereignty, and self-determination. He spoke passionately about Kenya's journey toward economic independence, technological innovation, and infrastructural development, achievements made possible through the China-Kenya partnership. This narrative was about more than economics alone. It was about reclaiming Africa's destiny without being tethered to the conditionalities and limitations that often accompany Western aid. In essence, Ruto's speech was a powerful testament to Africa's evolving role in global affairs, one where the continent defines its own future, pursues diverse partnerships, and asserts its rightful place as a key player on the world stage. The US reaction, a sense of lost influence. Washington's reaction to President William Ruto's speech was both swift and telling. Behind closed doors, the US expressed discomfort and concern, recognizing that Ruto's words challenged long-standing diplomatic efforts designed to keep African nations firmly within the Western sphere of influence. This was not just a simple diplomatic disagreement, it revealed a deeper anxiety about Africa's evolving loyalties and growing autonomy on the global stage. For decades, the United States has viewed Africa as a strategic arena in the competition against China and Russia. Washington's policies aim to maintain influence by shaping African alliances and development paths. However, with leaders like Ruto openly celebrating China's significant role in Africa's economic growth and development, the American narrative has been called into question. Ruto's speech disrupted the familiar geopolitical script, signaling a new era where African nations assert their right to diversify partnerships and assert sovereignty. In many respects, Ruto's address served as a wake-up call for the US and the international community. It underscored a critical truth. Africa's future will be determined by Africans themselves. African leaders are increasingly confident in choosing partners that best align with their unique needs and priorities, rather than defaulting to traditional powers. This shift echoes the revolutionary spirit embodied by leaders like Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, who similarly champions self-determination and bold leadership amid external pressures. Ultimately, the reaction in Washington highlights the growing recognition that Africa is no longer a passive player, but a dynamic continent ready to shape its own destiny.
Because social, economic, political, and ideological reforms need order and discipline, and everyone has a role to play in this.
Ibrahim Traore, Africa's revolutionary echo. Ibrahim Traore, the young and determined leader from Burkina Faso, represents a rising wave of African leadership, unafraid to challenge traditional power structures. His ascent to power in 2022 was driven by a mission to restore sovereignty, dignity, and self-reliance to his people. Traore swiftly moved to sever ties with exploitative foreign powers, prioritizing local solutions, grassroots empowerment, and national pride. His Africa First philosophy closely mirrors the sentiments expressed by President William Ruto during his speech in China. Both leaders are calling for a new African identity, one free from the lingering grip of neocolonialism. Traore's concrete actions in Burkina Faso, including the rejection of conditional foreign aid, the revitalization of local industries, and the pursuit of military independence, serve as a real-world example of what Ruto envisions on the broader economic and diplomatic stage. Western powers, particularly the United States, often perceive Traore as a destabilizing figure in West Africa. His unapologetic stance against Western agendas and his openness to engage with non-traditional partners like China and Russia have attracted criticism. Yet, it is precisely this bold, unapologetic leadership that resonates across the continent, fueling hope for an Africa that chooses its own path and defines its own destiny.
A relationship deeply rooted in a historic, resilient, and all-weather friendship that has endured the test of time.
Kenya-China relations, a new chapter in African diplomacy. President William Ruto's speech in China highlighted the immense benefits Kenya has reaped through its strategic partnership with China. Chief among these is the Standard Gauge Railway, SGR, a transformative infrastructure project largely financed by Chinese investment. The SGR symbolizes more than just transportation. It stands as a powerful emblem of what is possible when African countries pivot toward alternative alliances that prioritize development without conditionalities. Through this cooperation, Kenya has witnessed significant gains: job creation, improved trade routes, and stronger connectivity with East African neighbors. Ruto described the collaboration as a win-win model of development, drawing a sharp contrast with the strings-attached aid often imposed by Western countries. Standing in the halls of power in Beijing and declaring Kenya's commitment to this partnership, Ruto sent a clear and powerful message. Africa's destiny will no longer be dictated by Western political agendas. This message resonates deeply with the revolutionary stance of Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore. Like Ruto, Traore has pushed for economic independence and diversified alliances, placing the needs of his people above external influence. His leadership offers timely lessons for Kenya and the broader African continent in 2025. One of Traore's defining characteristics is his courage. Courage to make bold, often unpopular decisions, to stand firm against entrenched interests, and to champion policies that reflect the people's needs. In an era where global powers compete for influence across Africa, this kind of fearless leadership is more essential than ever. Traore's approach to security is another key lesson. His handling of internal insurgencies in Burkina Faso through African-led solutions, rather than reliance on foreign military forces, affirms the value of sovereignty and local ownership in defense matters. Kenya, which faces its own security challenges, can draw inspiration from this model of self-reliance and resilience. Moreover, Traore represents the untapped potential of Africa's youthful demographic. His leadership fuses youthful energy with vision, proving that young leaders can rise to meet the continent's challenges. Ruto's speech echoed this same spirit, an optimistic call for Africa's youth to step into leadership roles, rewrite their narratives, and dismantle the outdated frameworks that have held them back for generations. Together, Ruto and Traore represent a new chapter for Africa, bold, self-determined, and unapologetically forward-looking.
That Uganda economy is just a quarter the size of Kenya, and that Tanzania economy stands at 50% of Kenya's.
The economic shift, Africa's diversified partnerships. At the heart of President William Ruto's speech was a powerful message of economic empowerment. He outlined a vision where Africa moves beyond dependency, no longer begging for aid, but negotiating from a position of strength. This transformation hinges on building critical infrastructure, investing in technology, and developing industrial hubs capable of competing on a global scale. China's role in this shift is central. Through financing major infrastructure projects and supporting the development of industrial parks, China has positioned itself as a pragmatic and reliable partner. Unlike Western nations that often attach aid to political reforms and human rights conditions, China's approach emphasizes sovereignty and mutual benefit. This model resonates with many African leaders who seek progress without external interference. Ruto's praise for this partnership struck a nerve in Washington. It challenged the traditional Western narrative and threatened the long-standing economic dominance the US and its allies have held in Africa. But for Ruto and leaders like Ibrahim Traore, this is more than a policy shift. It represents a new African reality, a continent experiencing a renaissance, driven by its own people, choosing its own path, and reclaiming control over its economic destiny. The political implications: challenging Western hegemony. Ruto's speech was more than economic pragmatism. It was a political statement. By affirming Kenya's alliance with China, Ruto implicitly challenged Western political hegemony in Africa. This challenge is significant because it signals a decline in Western influence and a rise in multipolarity on the continent. The US sees this as a threat to its strategic interests. Africa's vast resources, growing markets, and strategic location make it a prize for global powers. Ruto's stance represents a fracture in the old order where African leaders were expected to toe the Western line. In this context, Ibrahim Traore's political defiance in Burkina Faso mirrors Ruto's diplomatic boldness. Both leaders refuse to be puppets of external powers. Instead, they advocate for African solutions to African problems, signaling a shift towards true political independence. Ruto's speech also struck a chord on the cultural and social levels. It called on Africans to embrace their identity, history, and future with pride. This call for self-confidence is essential in overcoming the psychological legacy of colonialism and dependency. The spirit of Ibrahim Traore complements this message. Traore's leadership is rooted in a deep connection with his people's history and struggles. He invokes African pride as a tool for unity and resistance against neo-colonial forces. For Kenya and other African nations, this means fostering educational reforms that highlight African achievements, promoting cultural industries, and encouraging social policies that prioritize African values. Ruto's speech in China was a rallying cry for this cultural renaissance. The strategic vision, preparing for 2025 and beyond. Looking ahead to 2025, the lessons drawn from the leadership of William Ruto and Ibrahim Traore become increasingly vital for Africa's future. The continent stands at a critical crossroads, facing a choice between remaining passive spectators in global affairs or boldly stepping forward as influential architects of its own destiny. Ruto's strategic vision, articulated powerfully during his address in China, emphasizes the expansion of trade partnerships, investment in technology and innovation, and the development of infrastructure that not only connects African nations internally, but also links the continent more integrally to the global economy. This approach lays the foundation for sustainable growth and increased self-reliance. Complementing this, Traore's leadership in Burkina Faso underscores the importance of security, sovereignty, and grassroots empowerment, pillars essential for protecting the gains made and fostering resilient societies. Together, these leadership models form a roadmap that African nations can follow, one rooted in unity, mutual support for sovereignty, and the creation of a united front capable of resisting external interference. The synergy between Ruto's diplomatic efforts and Traore's revolutionary approach signals a transformative moment for Africa. It is a clear declaration that the continent is determined to break free from the lingering shadows of dependency and engage with the world on its own terms. The unease expressed by Washington in response to Ruto's speech highlights the shifting dynamics of global influence. Yet this should not discourage African leaders. Instead, it should galvanize them to pursue courageous and sovereign policies that reflect Africa's interests and aspirations. As 2025 dawns, the message resonates unmistakably. Africa will no longer accept being sidelined. Inspired by leaders like Ruto and Traore, the continent is poised to reclaim its narrative, chart a bold future, and stand proudly as an equal among nations on the global stage. President Ruto's speech marks a pivotal moment in Kenya's foreign relations, a declaration of independence in a complex geopolitical landscape. Coupled with Captain Traore's inspiring stance, it's clear that emerging leaders are redefining how countries negotiate power and partnership. What do you think this means for Africa's future on the world stage? Comment below, subscribe, and stay tuned as we continue to follow these groundbreaking stories.